Welcome to the Blue Cafe. We offer stories of infidelity, betrayal, and redemption. Please like and subscribe. Cheers. Now, on to today's story. Betrayal on the home front. Need support. I wish I had known these forums existed when I went through the hell of finding out my wife, now ex, was having an affair while I was on my last deployment to Afghanistan. Not that I would wish the experience on anyone, but I have found it helpful to hear from others that have had similar experiences and to know that I'm not alone in feeling the anger and pain, even years later. So here's my contribution. Even though all of our normal bills had been put on auto payment prior to my deployment, I would occasionally log in and check balances, just to make sure everything was tracking and getting paid as it should. Money wasn't an issue, but I knew that between my wife's demanding job on a local military base and multiple kids to look after, something could fall between the cracks. On a whim, I opened up the Visa/debit card and started scrolling through the transaction history. The transactions were mostly routine, a few too many dinners out, but it's not easy being the parent managing things with a deployed spouse, so I wasn't going to say anything. Then I noticed a transaction that surprised me. An airline ticket to a tourist destination on the other side of the country. The trip was scheduled for next month, even though I had almost 6 months left on my deployment. The transaction had been processed several weeks prior. I tried to think of a good reason for my wife to book that flight and not tell me about it. It could not have been a work trip, not only because of the destination but because government travel does not allow you to use your personal credit card. During our next Skype opportunity, after the kids were out of earshot, I casually mentioned the airline ticket and asked my wife what that was about. She hesitated and asked me how I knew about that. She never did online banking and was apparently unaware of the level of detail available online. She quickly recovered and told me that all of the stress of dealing with the kids by herself caused her to accept an invitation for a girls' mental health retreat with some of her female CO workers. I told her I understood she might be stressed, but still it seems like traveling across the country and leaving your kids at home without another parent might be something that we would have discussed before you purchased the plane ticket. Then I asked her who would be taking care of the children for the week she was gone. She responded that a 16-year-old neighbor girl would be watching our children, all of whom were young, with the youngest still in diapers. I replied that if there was not a responsible adult in the house taking care of the children, that I would personally notify Child Protective Services. So she quickly agreed to ask her mother to drive up and watch the kids. Of course, the reason she would be so reckless as to get a child to watch our children for a week was because her mother or any other adult might ask questions about the trip. She told her mother and the children that it was a business trip, but once I discovered the trip, she could not use that excuse with me, because as a service member and therefore a government employee myself, I would have seen right through that lie, hence the girls' retreat line. I halfway expected her to cancel the trip if it was not legitimate, because who in their right mind would go through with an affair trip once the spouse had discovered the tickets? But whether it was because she felt locked into her story and had to go through with it, or she simply wanted it so badly she was rationalizing that she would not get caught, she did get on the plane. When I was not able to reach my wife the day before the trip, I called my mother-in-law to check on the kids, and she told me my wife had left earlier in the day to spend the night in a hotel next to the airport. A little unusual, since we had flown out of that airport many times on vacations and never had any problem driving the 50 miles the morning of the flight. Also, no hotel charge ever appeared for that night. I also kept waiting for any hotel charge to appear at the destination, and it never did, even though she was there a week. This particular tourist destination is famous for being expensive, and yet over the course of the week I only saw 2 charges on my wife's bank card. I could tell from the transactions that she was in fact at the destination she claimed to be going to, but how she managed to eat for a week and take in the sights without spending any money was another mystery. She never tried to contact me by phone or email the entire time she was on her so-called retreat, even though I had an Afghan cell phone as well as fairly regular access to email and the internet. I asked her to send me some pictures of her and her friends. explaining that it would do me good to see her enjoying herself and recharging her batteries, so to speak. Shockingly, she had not a single picture of a week in a tourist mecca. While she was at her destination, I was in a location with internet access, and started reviewing phone logs. I found one number that she was sending and receiving calls to many times per day, including the middle of the night. The phone calls would often last over an hour. And these phone calls started not when I was in Afghanistan but when I was in another state for a couple of months doing training for the deployment. I was essentially on the deployment because there was only a weekend back at home between the training and the deployment. I figured I had given her enough ropes, so I started pressing her for the names of her friends that went on the trip with her. When she told me that all of the friends except one had backed out right before the trip, I knew she was panicking. She was trying to simplify her story. She gave me one name but would not give me the last name or the department that this woman supposedly worked in. I then said we will come back to the name of the woman that supposedly went on the trip with her, but we really needed to discuss these phone records. I gave her the name the phone number was associated with. Turns out that was her affair partner's father. Then I pointed out the fact that going back to the time I began my pre-deployment training up until the present, she was calling this guy 10 to 20 times a day. The only exception was there were no calls to or from that number after she left for the supposed hotel the night before her trip, and there were no calls to or from that number the entire time she was on her retreat. Furthermore, the calls only started back during the time she would have been driving home from the airport after her return trip. I told her that I found it odd someone who she could not resist talking to a minimum of 10 times a day for a year simply dropped off her phone log the night before her flight when she was supposedly in a hotel near the airport, and then resumed like clockwork about an hour and a half after her return flight landed. I had to answer that call abruptly, but by the next time we spoke I had confirmed there was no woman with that name at her command. I informed her I had proof that the woman she claimed to have gone to the destination with was fictitious, and that we had already established the man with the mystery phone in his pocket was on that trip with her. She eventually admitted that it was a male co-worker but still claimed everyone else backed out on her, and so it was just by chance that this guy that she was calling multiple times a day for a year ended up being the one on the plane with her. However, once again she could not provide a single name of a person who would substantiate the story that they had originally been planning to go on the trip. Ultimately she admitted there was never anyone else except this guy that was going with her. The inability to produce a hotel receipt or show any transaction for a hotel on her bank card forced her to admit that she shared a room with him, but she claimed it was a suite. Just two friends sharing expenses. I pointed out that according to the phone records it would suggest that this same guy spared you a hotel expense the night before the flight as well. I told her she was a liar and a cheat and that I wanted a divorce. She then started wailing like someone that just received bad news on Judgment Day. She then got the kids involved, forcing them to hold the camera so that I could see her, all sprawled out on the kitchen floor bawling and begging me not to leave her. I didn't continue the call because I did not want to discuss it in front of the children. For the remainder of the deployment I would periodically grill her just to watch her squirm and tell more lies that I could catch her in. When I finally returned from deployment and took a cab to the house to pick up some clothes and uniforms, she tried to come on to me because she knew if she convinced me to sleep with her it would reset the clock on the 12-month divorce waiting period in our state, which had been running since I emailed her that we were separated pending a divorce 6 months ago. I told her that I may have been in Afghanistan for a year but I still wasn't that desperate. After another week of begging and pleading, she asked me if there was anything she could do to make me consider not divorcing her. She offered a one-sided open marriage so that I could get my revenge. She offered to stay in a sexless marriage since I told her I would never touch her again. I replied that it was a long shot, but if she was completely honest and answered every question no matter how graphic, then maybe I would consider it. She started telling me about when they met and the one first ST time they hooked up, but it didn't take long before I spotted inconsistencies and demonstrable lies in her story. I didn't point this out at the moment because I wanted to let her spin the whole thing out before I started picking it apart. When I left for the hotel that evening, I asked her if she had stopped all contact with the affair partner, and she said she could if I really wanted her to. I told her that a sane person would not have made that comment, but yes, I really wanted her to, and she agreed. 4 days later, when she thought I was halfway to New York with the kids, I noticed on the locator app that we have on the phones that she was at a restaurant in a nearby city. Since she thought I was out of town, I waited until the tracker showed her back at home, waited a few minutes and walked in on her and an affair partner in our bedroom. There was only her car in our driveway, so either they drove her car from a restaurant that was over an hour away, or they parked her in a hidden location so that the neighbors would not see. The AP bolted, but my son said, "Isn't that Tom?" not his real name, and only then did I confirm the guy running down the street was the affair partner. That is also when I realized that not only did my kids know him, they were on a first-name basis. My wife tried to say that he had just come down the hour and a half from where he lives to check out the new bathroom light fixture. She was getting clearly agitated and finally snuck past me, jumped in her car and left for about 20 minutes. My guess is she picked up an affair partner down the street and transported him about a mile away to a shopping center where his car was probably hidden. I could go on for days with the individual lies that she told over the coming days and months. But we learned through the guardian ad litem in the custody fight that the affair partner had practically been living at our house. The AP had picked up the kids from school and daycare. AP, my then wife, and the kids went on outings as a family. Sometimes this guy even took my kids out without my wife. My son even walked in on him in the shower in his mother's bedroom once. After I got full custody, the kids moved with me to another city. I try to be civil and co-parent, but it's not always easy. My ex-wife tried to convince her friends and family that I had been the one cheating. Absolutely not true ever. Ever since the divorce, she has begged me to take her back. I either don't respond or change the subject, but whenever she makes that suggestion, it feels like D-Day all over again. I try my best to forgive her because I think she has deep-seated mental issues that contribute to this behavior. I say that because before I met her, she was engaged to a guy that was about to start medical school, and he broke it off after catching her cheating. I can forgive the people that tried to kill me on a regular basis, but I cannot and will not ever forgive her for what she put my children through. Believe it or not, I've only hit the high points, but I hope reading this and knowing there is light at the end of the tunnel might help someone going through the same experience at the moment. Unfortunately, way too common for our military members. I am sorry, but it sounds like you came back from hell, twice. Thanks for your service. Jody, out military's biggest open secret. Sorry brother, I feel your pain. I had at least 4 Jodys visiting my ex-wife while I slogged through Desert Shield/Storm. That Jody sure does get around. This wasn't the first Jody to visit my wife, just the first one she couldn't deny. I don't know many jarheads that didn't get a visit from Jody. Or to be legal to square those duckers away. TBH, servicemen should have federally backed dissolution rights on grounds of infidelity. It's so ungodly common. Absolutely, you shit on someone that bad, you forfeit your right to do it again. Sorry this happened to you, but glad you stood firm and didn't fall for any of her gaslighting. What your ex-wife did was despicable, not to mention she put your children in danger. How old were the kids, BTW? It's interesting that you got full custody. I wonder what her friends have to say about that. I deliberately omitted the ages of the children, but the youngest one was in diapers and the middle child wasn't too much older. The oldest child was old enough to have some idea of what was going on when the affair partner was there every day, but the oldest had a bad relationship with her mother and was afraid to get involved. I think her friends and family were shocked at the custody outcome, but they only knew what she told them, and she painted a picture that was radically different from reality. The children all told the court they wanted to live with me, and the guardian ad litem report to the judge was brutal for my ex-W. I could tell the first time I met with the guardian ad litem she was skeptical of me, and believed I was just asking for custody as leverage in the property settlement. By the time she talked to everyone that knew my ex and the children, she recommended to the court let the children be put in my custody immediately. I figured that at least one of the children was old enough to piece things together. That was a horrible position your wife put her child in. I hope you reiterated that none of this was his/her fault. Children have a tendency to blame themselves for their parents' divorce. Did you ever find out what became of the AP? I think you are correct, your wife may have some type of disorder, since this is not the first time she has done something like this. Glad the kids are with you. They need at least one reliable parent. Best of luck with everything. The children have coped fine. They don't have that much interaction with their mother anymore. I did leave voicemail messages with the affair partner's parents, and I sent a letter to his supposed girlfriend, but I didn't go after his employment because that would have put my wife's employment at risk, which would have put her ability to pay child support debt risk. Gotcha. The most important thing is that the kids are doing well. With you being in full custody, does that mean no more deployment? BTW, how did you concentrate on work knowing that you'll need to wait for months before confronting and that someone else is with your wife and kids? The stage of career and the number of previous deployments means that barring World War III breaking out, I won't be deployed again. It was hard to focus. Thankfully, I was unaware my kids had ever met this douche before I came home and literally caught him in my bedroom with my wife. He dumped her after that. I found her emails trying to get him back, but he ghosted her. I'm surprised you didn't go ballistic on that guy. I think I'd be ready to wallop him half dead at least. I'm sure the father instinct in you is to prioritize making sure the no one thing is that the kids is safe and with you. Is it by the nature of army training? As I've encountered several instructors that mention when you are prepared or trained in violence you can choose an adequate response to a situation. But still there's certain things that doesn't follow that certain response idea for me. There were a few reasons I didn't. First of all three kids were in close proximity. Second, we were technically separated at this point and I wasn't 100% sure this was not a new guy that she met after we were separated. Although it did occur to me that if this was some new guy I met after we separated, then she wasn't serious about reconciliation. By the time my son had positively identified him as the affair partner, he was already gone. And finally, part of me was thinking that this guy did me a favor by exposing her for who she really was. It sucked when my ex-wife would lie and deny, even as the evidence mounted. It must suck even worse when you are abroad serving your country. I am sorry. But I cannot and will not ever forgive her for what she put my children through. Ditto. My wife and I did everything in the face of overwhelming evidence for a long time. Then she confessed not everything but most things in some graphic detail. When I told her that she still wasn't being completely honest and transparent and we were going ahead with the divorce, then she recanted everything. Fortunately, I had my phone's voice recorder going and have a dumb gulp full of her confession. Not that you really need a confession when your wife sneaks off to Las Vegas with the guy. You find him in your bedroom with her when your kid walks in on him naked. As a child of a mother who did this, I can tell you now, the kids have seen a lot and probably don't know how to tell you and are internalizing it. My father was also in Afghanistan, so I have a duck ton of respect for y'all servicemen and women. Honestly, duck your ex. She's trash. Also, if I were you, I'd put your kids, who talk, in therapy to help them process the divorce. Remember, it's just as hard on them as you. Also, if she keeps harassing you, go to a lawyer and ask that all communication goes through her lawyer and yours instead of just you and her. That way, if anything goes to court, it isn't he or she said. I watched my parents' separation destroy my father along with other shit my mom did. That's what he ended up doing, and it worked out for the better. With love, a survivor as well. I'm sorry this happened to you. Your ex is a real piece of work. Congrats on getting full custody of your children. I understand not reporting your ex-wife and AP to their employers. I think it's fitting punishment for your wife to pay support for children she will rarely see. Oh well, she still has her AP, sarcasm. Good luck. Actually, he left her almost the same time I did. One hell of a journey. Congrats on making it out and getting full custody. Did the AP ditch her once you started the divorce? He dropped her like a hot potato. I told her that a younger guy with no kids does not want to commit to an older woman with 3 kids and an angry husband. How did you end up with full custody in this situation? Everyone that the Guardian ad litem interviewed, from school teachers to nannies to the children, all gave statements that my ex had a serious alcohol problem. Then she showed up at a custody hearing intoxicated and got a DUI the next week. The court never even learned about her promiscuity. The only reason she was even allowed supervised visitation at my discretion is because I asked the court not to cut her off completely. Wow, she was / is a mess. Hate to say it, but did you DNA test your kids? I did, and they're mine. My ex seemed surprised at the result. Now that is crazy. Was she surprised? Wow. WTH. Oh wow, thank God. Would be another punch in the stomach if it wasn't yours and you'd won custody. I don't know if I ever could take care of someone else's children, especially with a cheating spouse. This post is really well written, and sorry you had to go through this. Out of interest. I say that because before I met her she was engaged to a guy that was about to start medical school, and he broke it off after catching her cheating. At the time, how did you justify marrying her given that you knew this? When I pressed her on the details, she assured me that her former fiancé had misinterpreted innocent time spent with a male friend. I was young, inexperienced, and bought it hook, line and sinker. That tells you she was cheating for a long time and also thought she was making you raise another man's child. How can you want to be with this woman? I don't want to be with her, I assure you. I pretended to consider reconciliation only to keep her talking while the recorder was going. Our divorce is final. So why does she want your marriage to continue? Her AP was practically living with her while you were deployed. Why doesn't she just marry him? I asked her the same question after she told me what a good man the AP was. She just gave me the same cheater BS about how much she loved me and started recanting her previous admissions of having sex with the guy. I believed the reality was that she was never able to get this guy to make a commitment and didn't want to lose her safety net. Of course he ghosted her not long after the affair was exposed, and then she really tried to get me back. Too late for that. That's really a fascinating tale. It shows all the cheater handbooks. Astonishing how bad her OPSEC was, even after she knew you were onto her. How did you kids react to having a live-in boyfriend? Good luck. The youngest just thought it was mommy's friend. They didn't really understand the cheating concept. The oldest had an idea that something bad was happening, but was afraid of mom. I was working in Hampton, Virginia. I was at a bar full of Navy wives waiting on word that the fleet had cleared the Chesapeake Bay. It was a game to them. I have witnessed the same thing. Back when I first joined the military, I was even hit on by what they called boomer widows whose husbands were at sea. I'm sure I'm about the millionth deployed soldier or sailor that's experienced the same thing. Well, that is one hell of an unfortunate story. You are probably correct that your wife is suffering from a mental illness. I hope that your family settles nicely. Is there a possibility of you deploying again soon? Given the range of ages, it appears you either need a nanny or a way of avoiding deployment. You have acted decisively and managed to work through the smokescreen that your WW was trying to hide behind. Wishing you and yours easy days. Thanks. There are no more deployments in my future. I'm on my last tour of duty. We hope you have enjoyed today's episode. Please comment, like and subscribe. Cheers. Have a wonderful day or night, wherever you are.